May 31, 1889. 14 miles above Johnstown, Pennsylvania, water was sliding over the top of an earthen dam. The men trying to save it had already lost. There was no way to open it. Behind it lay a private lake 2 miles long, owned by 61 of the richest men in America. Carnegie, Frick, Mellon. They bought a dam Pennsylvania had built, and then they changed it. 4 hours before the water came, 3 telegraph warnings went down the valley. They arrived. They were red. Almost nobody moved. At 3:10 that afternoon, the dam stopped holding. By dark, 2,209 people were dead. Everything you are about to see is a reconstruction. It is built from real photographs taken at Johnstown in the days after the water came, held now in the public domain archives of the Library of Congress. This is the story of how the water got there. The club did not build the dam. Pennsylvania did between 1838 and 1853 to feed a canal, 72 feet high, 931 feet long, packed earth and rock. It had 1 stone spillway cut into rock and 5 cast-iron discharge pipes at its base. The pipes were the safety valve. Open them and the lake emptied faster than any storm could fill it. In 1875, it was sold to a congressman named John Riley. He pulled the 5 pipes out and sold them for scrap. 4 years later, a Pittsburgh contractor bought it for $2,000 and founded the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. They repaired the breach, raised the lake, and stocked it with bass. They never replaced the pipes. From that day on, there was no way on earth to lower Lake Conemaugh. That was the first change, not the last. The club wanted a carriage road along the crest, wide enough for 2 carriages to pass. So they cut the crest down, by 1 to 3 feet, depending where you measured. Every foot they took off was a foot of margin between the lake and the top. The embankment they rebuilt was patched with earth, rock, brush, straw, and manure. It settled unevenly. The middle sagged lower than the ends. If water came over, it would come over in the center, the worst possible place, and because the lake held expensive fish, they bolted iron screens across the spillway. The only outlet the dam had left was now a grate. In November 1880, a man in Johnstown put all of it in writing. Daniel Morrell ran Cambria Iron, the valley's largest employer. He sent his own engineer up to inspect the dam. The report found leaks, no discharge pipes, and no engineering supervision. It said the dam was unsafe. The club's president wrote back, "You and your people," he told Morrell, "are in no danger from our enterprise." Morrell offered to pay for proper repairs himself. Nothing came of it. He died in 1885. Johnstown was a steel town of 30,000, wedged where 2 rivers meet in a narrow valley. It flooded almost every spring. High water was an inconvenience, not an emergency. On Memorial Day, the town paraded under a gray sky. That evening, it began to rain. One of the heaviest storms ever recorded there. 6 to 10 inches fell in a day. By dawn, the streets were under 2 to 10 feet of water. Families carried furniture upstairs, the way they always did. 14 miles above them, the lake was rising an inch every 10 minutes. The club's president rounded up laborers at first light. The club's resident engineer was 23 years old. He had no authority to cut that dam. All he could do was send word downstream and count the 14 miles between the lake and 30,000 people. They plowed a furrow to raise the crest. They cut a new channel at the western end. They tried to tear the screens out of the spillway. The screens were packed solid. They would not come free. Around noon, he rode 2 miles down to South Fork to have a warning telegraphed. In the tower there, an operator took the message from a man she wasn't sure she could trust. She put it on the wire anyway. The storm had brought lines down. Parts of the warning traveled the last miles on foot. At least 3 warnings reached the valley. The railroad had them. Western Union had them. They were not ignored because nobody sent them. They were ignored because everybody had heard them before. The dam had been about to break every rainy season for a generation. It had partly failed once, in 1862, and nothing happened. It was an old story. Most of Johnstown did nothing at all. Just before noon, water began running over the crest, in the center, where it sagged lowest. Once an earthen dam is overtopped, the water eats the downstream face. From there, it is only a question of time. Men stood on the abutments and watched the slope slough away for 3 hours. At about 3:10, the center of the dam simply moved away. There was no explosion. Witnesses were consistent. It did not burst. It went. 20 million tons of water left the lake. Roughly what goes over Niagara Falls in 36 minutes. South Fork sat mostly on high ground. It lost 30 buildings and 4 people. 4 miles on, the water hit a stone railway viaduct 78 feet high. Debris jammed the arch and held. For a few minutes, the flood stopped and pooled behind it. Then the viaduct collapsed, and it all broke loose again. A second dam burst on top of the first. A bridge that broke had just saved the ground below it. 14 miles on stood a bridge that would not break. Mineral Point, 30 houses, ceased to exist. 16 died there. At East Connemore, a locomotive engineer heard it coming behind him. He tied his whistle down, opened the throttle, and ran ahead of the water into town. A locked whistle meant danger. People understood it and ran for the hillside. About 50 died there, many of them passengers from a stopped express. The whistle is credited with saving many more. Locomotives weighing 170,000 pounds were carried nearly a mile. Woodvale got no warning at all. Of 1,100 people, 314 died. Nearly 1 in 3, the wireworks boilers exploded and the flood picked up what was inside. Miles of barbed wire. At 4:07, 57 minutes after the dam let go, the water reached Johnstown. It was 35 to 40 feet high and moving at about 40 miles an hour. The main destruction took about 10 minutes. 1,600 homes were gone. 4 square miles scraped down to mud and rock. The water struck the mountainside at the end of the valley and rebounded. A back wave ran up the other river and took streets that had survived the first hit. From the roof of their barn, a 16-year-old watched his family's house crushed with both parents inside. He rode that roof through the wreckage, at one point running across rolling debris like a river driver on logs. He lived. Orphaned that afternoon, he became one of the great public health doctors of the next century. A 6-year-old girl was swept away on a mattress. A laborer jumped onto the raft and threw her 15 feet through the air into the arms of men leaning from a window. In the Western Union office, the manager, a Civil War widow, stayed at her key, relaying river readings until the water took the building. She and her daughter died. Neither body was ever identified. And below the town, all of it arrived at the stone bridge. The bridge held. Everything the flood had gathered in 14 miles piled against it. Houses, trees, rail cars, locomotives, animals, people. The pile covered about 30 acres. Wound through all of it were the miles of barbed wire. People who survived the wave arrived at the bridge alive and could not get out. That night, the wreckage caught fire and burned for 3 days. As many as 80 are believed to have died in that fire. The number is an estimate. Nobody could count them. Elsewhere, 264 people spent the night crowded into a 4-story building that had somehow stayed up. By morning, the water was gone, and a question was moving faster than the relief trains. Who owned that dam? 2,209 people were dead. 99 entire families were wiped out. 396 of the dead were children. 124 women were widowed. 198 men lost their wives. More than 750 were never identified. They lie under blank stones in a plot called the Unknown. Bodies were found as far away as Cincinnati and as late as 1911. Damage came to $17 million in 1889 money. On June 5th, Clara Barton arrived, 67 years old, and stayed 5 months. It was the American Red Cross's first major peacetime relief operation. Donations reached $3.75 million from every American state and 18 foreign countries. Damage suits were filed against the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Not one of them succeeded. Courts treated the flood as an act of God. The club was a thinly capitalized corporation with almost nothing to attach. No member was ever held personally liable. Members did give to the relief funds. One later built the town a library, the building that houses the Flood Museum today. They admitted nothing and they paid no damages. Those are two different things, and both are true. In 1891, an engineering committee concluded the dam would have failed even as originally built. That finding stood for a century. In 2016, a peer-reviewed reanalysis measured the original design against the one the club left behind. The dam Pennsylvania built had more than twice the discharge capacity at overtopping. Properly rebuilt, the study concluded, it would likely have survived the storm. The rain was not the reason. The carriage road on the crest was. The screens across the spillway were, and 5 iron pipes sold for scrap in 1875, 14 miles, 57 minutes, 2,209 dead, and a lake 61 men could not lower because they had sold the means to do it. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. These videos take real work to research and bring to life. If this one earned it, dropping a like helps other people find it. And if you'd like to see more, consider subscribing. This has been Cataclysm History, and I'll see you in the next one.